We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions.
Swinging a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup. The Flyers win the Stanley Cup for the lead. Yes!
Iverson, wow, what a fake off Daniels as he broke his ankles and got all the way to the cup.
Well, good morning. This is Drunk on the Phils, but it's Eric. I feel like lately I'm watching the sports teams. It's been an exciting time because there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on with all the teams, but the Phillies in particular have mastered the art of inconsistency. It's feast or famine. It's kind of all or nothing. And specifically with the offense, I know we'll get into some details, but the idea that this team has just mastered, you can score 1 run in 3 games and 13 runs in another game and get right back to not scoring, at all. Just frustrating time to be watching this team. And yet they're sitting right in prime position to, kind of take a stranglehold of the division if they can get their act together.
Yeah, I mean, this team, I think it's been the same core now since 2022, really. I mean, I think we know what we're going to get. They're going to go through very, very torrent hot streaks and ice cold streaks. And it just seems like everyone's hot or everyone's slumping at the same time. Like there's not really like an in-between where you have some guys going, some guys not. But, I think after that Astros series and not really scoring at all, having that game on Thursday night against the Braves where they put up all those runs, I think they needed that just to kind of get it going. And it's funny, we've talked about this before, but it's like every single Phillies team, it doesn't matter what era we're talking about, what decade we're talking about, whenever they put up a lot of runs, they don't score the next day. And, they held true to that last night. Then again, Schwellenbach pitched really, really well. But some of their approaches just aren't great all the time either. Like the first pitch swinging from Castellanos, Bohm did it again last night, grounding out with guys on base on the first pitch. It's like, they're just not going to change. They're not going to change.
It's kind of like they are who we thought they are, right? Yeah. We know that this team kind of is what it is. We know that, you're going to have these at-bats where they're going to, you could get a guy that could get a 4-pitch walk and the next guy's coming up and he's going to be swinging first pitch and, and grounds into a double play. Those kind of things, I think we've just become accustomed to just expect. It's just, and that's what kind of makes me feel like at some point in time, does this team need like a major shakeup? Like, do they need, as talented as this group can be, is there something that has to happen in order to shake the consistency, to shake the team up, to let them know that it's they have to be in a win now approach. The window, you can tell with, Harper's kind of on the precipice of coming back. I feel like you're probably going to see him, when this team comes back and plays the Padres. But are they, with the impending free agency of Ranger Suarez and Schwarber and Real Muto, and I feel like this might be a latch. This could be a last ditch effort to kind of go to take one really, really big swing at, seeing if this team can get to the World Series, because the pitching, specifically the starting pitching, has been absolutely outstanding. And we can start with the Astros series. Right? Like in the Astros series, you give up a total of 5 runs. Your starters all gave up 1 run. Like if you look at the pitching lines for all 3 starters, you would expect that all of those guys would all walk away with wins because of how far into the game they were able to go, the impressiveness of keeping guys off base, of keeping guys on their toes, not like that was the most frustrating part about that series. Both impressive and frustrating at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, the starting pitching is better than advertised, I think. I mean, I think coming into the season, we talked about it, before the season started, that was going to be one of the strengths. It's not like it was a surprise. I think everyone knew that coming in. But it's been so good. Even last night, and I know I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here because it's not the Astros series, but Luzardo clearly didn't have his best stuff, but settled in, right?
Yeah.
But every game in that Astros series, every single starter pitched great. I mean, even there was a couple hiccups here and there where they might have an inning where they threw a couple more pitches than they wanted to. But when you give up 5 runs in a series, especially to a team like the Astros have been hot.
Right.
And when you give up 5 runs in an entire series, you would think you'd win more than 1 game.
Yeah.
They came away with 0. So it's frustrating, and it's got to be frustrating for the starting pitching, just doing their jobs, and the offense just wasn't there to do theirs.
That to me is that's where my frustration is growing a little bit. It's like you can't match up these incredibly impressive pitching performances with any kind of offense. Like the fact that in that first game you get Ranger Suarez to pitch 7 2/3, he gives up. I'm just looking at the run line, right? Gives up 4 hits, 1 earned, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, and you can't get him 1 run of support.
I mean, now, in fairness to the Astros, their starting pitching is pretty good too. Framber in that first game was actually gettable though. Hunter Brown was just filthy. So, yeah, it's tough, but that's the type of pitching you're going to see in a postseason series. You're not going to see these nobodies in a postseason series. So those are the guys you got to hit, especially when Framber didn't have his best stuff. I'm like, this has to be their chance to pounce on him, and they're like, nah, we don't care.
Yeah, and then you come back in game 2, right? And Wheeler gives you 6. 3 hits, no runs, 3 walks, 8 strikeouts. And they get shut out again.
Yep.
I think it got to 22, 23 consecutive innings before they had a run, something like that.
It might have been 24 actually, because there was the Phillies tailgate account on Twitter was updating it every single inning. And I think I saw it actually got to 24 at one point. And then I'm just like, I need to go off. I need to go off Twitter for a little bit because,
well, yeah,
I'm getting
because they didn't put up a run. 24 would probably be right because they didn't put up a run until the 8th inning of game 3.
Yeah,
right, and in that third game, right, Christopher Sanchez gives you 6 innings, 5 hits, one earned run, and 11 strikeouts.
Yeah, I mean,
and he was out of the game before they scored the run.
Yep. It's frustrating.
Yeah. It just I think there's no other word.
There's not. And then, I mean, go ahead.
No, and right, and then you see them come back, right? And this game on the game on Friday night that just gets pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, and they start it late, so they decide to push Abel, right? You make it a bullpen game, and the offense picks up right from the start, right? You're up you're up 10-0 in the third inning.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then they come back last night and they look exactly like they did throughout that entire Astro series. It's wild to see how it can swing so drastically.
Yeah. And, but I mean, I think, that's just it's the nature of this offense, and it's extremely, extremely frustrating because they're better than what they're putting up. The only thing that maybe is kind of a silver lining here is this time last year. Remember, they had basically the entire infield for the All-Star game was Phillies infielders starting.
Yes.
Because they were all hitting so well. But then we saw what happened after the All-Star break. I'm hoping, because they've had really good stretches prior, so far up to this point, but they've also had really bad stretches too. I'm hoping just get all the bad stretches out of the way now. Get to the deadline. I think we'll probably talk about this, but the deadline is just so hard to get, big talent because of what you have to give up, right? It is such a seller's market right now, to the point where it's like, I think they're going to make moves. Although, did you read that? I think it was a Gelb article about Dombrowski and his philosophy coming to the trade deadline here. I
didn't see it.
Not necessarily inspiring for people who want to make a big splash to the deadline. But
all right, talk to me because I missed it.
So he was basically saying that let's talk about bullpen wise. He was saying that in a postseason series, especially the way it works out this year, right, for the wild card and the division series, there's always those wild card's a shorter series anyway, but the division series has an extra day off. So instead of needing 4 starters, you'd only need 3. So basically he's saying that, we don't really need to get too much into the bullpen here because we're going to have 2 of those starters be able to move to the bullpen, which, okay, yeah, in a perfect world,
yeah,
okay, I see it. But there's 2 things here, right? You got to A, make it there, and B, hope that everyone stays healthy and everyone, stays efficient in this case. So it's like you're banking on things that maybe are going to happen and maybe aren't going to happen.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, it's a crapshoot. Like we saw what happened at the deadline last year, right? Like Carlos Estevez, I feel like his time as a Philly was underwhelming. And then I saw that as of right now, he's like tied for the league lead in saves. So, it's one of those things where I think it is, especially relievers, because they could be so volatile from year to year. We've seen it with relievers
very much so.
for the Phillies. So it's like, you might get a guy. How much do you want to give up? I don't know. It doesn't really sound like, though, he's planning on doing a whole lot. Maybe he's just, trying to lay low, maybe and not make too much of a much of an impression heading into it. But it just doesn't seem like there's going to be, at least from the tone of that article, that there's going to be a ton of major moves here.
So here's my thing with Estevez. This to me screams of like the high pressure situations aren't really for him, right? Pitches impressively enough to get traded when he's playing with the Angels when they're playing for nothing. Pitches impressive enough to comes here and has like a right.
Wasn't horrible, wasn't great.
It was just kind of like blah. It was almost like it kind of felt like the guys that he was just one of the guys that you had already had.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's pitching in, for a 4th place Royals team that really isn't playing for anything. And I think that just might be who he is. But I look at like that to me, like, I don't necessarily, I'm kind of like in the middle of what you described. I know that when they get to a playoff series, the rotation gets shortened. Those guys get shuttled to the bullpen. That makes your bullpen all that much deeper. I don't love the idea of banking on that because I agree with you. You have to get there, and you have to get there in a position to be able to maximize that, right? Getting there in a position where you're not just getting in, but getting there and having the home field advantage and having the opportunity to be able to, jump up on a series by throwing, 3 of your best guys. I agree with that. I do think that you need someone to load up in the back end of that bullpen. Like I think you need a Chapman, a Bautista. You need a guy that is going to fill the role that Alvarado is going to leave when the season ends. Because as good as he might be for you down the stretch, we know that because of the suspension, he's not going to play in the postseason. You need somebody to fill that role. But is Dombrowski going to spin it in a way where, that could be, is that Ranger Suarez? It has been in the past, right? When he closes down the series and send him to the World Series. I get it, but I don't love the idea of taking him out of the rotation because of how good he's been. But they are going to have this strange glutton of starting pitching. Like they're going to have potentially 6 starting pitchers coming down the stretch when we know that Painter's coming. He's, probably 4 or 5 weeks ish, 6 weeks maybe.
It
Or
might
maybe
be close
sooner.
to that. Like he's topping out over 90 pitches now at Lehigh Valley. The results
True.
have been mixed. But I mean, realistic. Then you have Abel in the mix too. Nola coming back. Like we could potentially have 7 guys who are all kind of in that mix there. So I really think at some point you have to look at, and you could probably do this down the stretch. But I think putting Abel in a relief role would be really good. Because right now, in terms of like his pitch mix, it's fastball and very curveball heavy. So for a starter, I feel like he kind of needs to hone in on that changeup a little bit more for him to be more effective. And I'm not saying he won't; he's still so young. But right now, I think he would be really good out of a bullpen situation. I'd rather try to keep Painter in a starting role, at least when he first comes up anyway. And when Nola comes back, like I really don't see Nola being a guy who goes in relief. He's kind of one of those guys, I think, that he's really only kind of fit for a starting role. But I mean, then you have other guys who have pitched out of the pen before, right? You've had Sanchez, you've had Ranger, but realistically, the way those two are pitching, I want them in the starting rotation.
Right.
So I think like Luzardo maybe is probably your best bet to go out of the bullpen, just because he's got great stuff. He's got a ton of pitches. He could go 1 to 2 innings for you if you really needed it. So they do have options there, but I don't love the idea of just banking on that and hoping everything goes well without making some splash at the deadline. I really think though, and I don't know if this is something that like Dave Dombrowski just really hasn't like adapted to yet, but I don't think that the trade deadline anymore is where you're going to make the best improvements. They have to be more aggressive in an off season. And I think if things don't go well this year, and we have the same ending results with a disappointing playoff series, especially from an offensive perspective, I think he's got to be more aggressive in the offseason, because you're not just going to make all these fixes at the deadline without having to mortgage the farm system.
Right. And like with the glutton of arms that they have, right? I think about what who am I trying to think about? David Price.
Mm-hmm.
The way that David Price, early on in his career, right, when he was brought up late in the season and then just kind of slid into the back end of that bullpen, and really kind of solidified that. Is that a role for one of these young guys, right? Like you talked about Abel, maybe Painter, maybe Painter can be like you've kind of ramped him up to start pitching, and you're getting him to that 4 or 5, 6 inning range with getting him to 90 pitches. Is it how easy of a transition is that back into going out there and just throwing 2 in? Like if you get someone to come in and throw 6, like, and then you bring him in for 2, right, and then you bring in your closer, and your closer could be right any number of who's on their off day, right? Like it it could be a Christopher Sanchez, it could be a Ranger Suarez, it could be an Aaron Nola, like all of those guys have really great demeanors, and it's what's hard is like I hate the idea of taking any of them out. Mm-hmm. Like Yes, some of them do have a better demeanor and a better pitch selection to be able to go into that. But I also hate the idea of taking them out. So maybe it's on a day by day basis, right? Maybe it's it's a guy throwing on his off. Maybe it's the day after his off day. However they decide to work it out, I think it's kind of on Rob Thompson to be really creative with how those guys get used in those spots, because you could have what is a very frustrating situation now turned into be like a huge asset, because we know how tight those games can be in the playoffs.
Yeah. And, I would say it's a good pitching problem to have, right? Like having too many starters is always a good thing. Unfortunately, though, I think what it's all going to boil down to, because, it is, again, this postseason baseball and regular season baseball are just so drastically different the way you have to match things up. But the biggest thing is just getting into the postseason hot. I mean, we've said it before, but like, how many times is it the hot team that wins a series? Going back and drawing back terrible memories, but that Diamondback series in 23, I was
just about to say that.
We came in ice cold to that series. They came in red hot. You look at the overall regular season numbers, the Diamondbacks had a minus 15 run differential that season. So like overall, and again, I know you can't base everything off of run differential, but I truly believe that it does have, it's a good indicator of how good a team is. Usually when you look at the end of the season standings and you look at the run differential, things kind of make sense when they finish the way they do. But that obviously was an outlier, and they got hot and they beat us because we couldn't hit. The bullpen kind of fell apart there. So you really need to come in hot. And my biggest concern right now is I think they can get by, not necessarily with the current state of the bullpen right now. They need to do something. Alvarado comes back in early August, which will be nice for a little bit. But I think they still need one more piece to hold those leads if the offense can get you one. But the offense to me right now is by far the scariest part of this team.
Yeah. They listen, whatever they add, this is something that, like, you and I are not the only ones saying this, but like, the guys that they have here have to perform. The guys that they've already paid have to perform. If those guys perform, even at like a baseline level, this team will win 97 games. Problem is that they're not. Problem is that they score 13 in one game, and in the previous 3 they score 5.
Yeah.
Like, and then they come back in the following game and score 1. Like they lose 10 out of 12. Like there are just too many, the peaks and valleys are too frequent in order for that. And the craziest thing is that out of all of this, right, on this day at the end of June, they're still sitting in first place. As frustrating as it's been, as inconsistent as the at-bats have been, and you're still sitting here like you're a half game up on the Mets at the end of June.
Yeah, and I mean the Mets, the Pirates took care of us a couple weekends ago. They're taking care of the Mets for us right now.
Yeah.
2 games in a row. I think it was 9-1 and 9-2. The Pirates are taking care of them. So that's helping us too. That the Mets are, because heading into the series against them, and we played them. The Mets have been struggling. So they, I heard after the game last night, the Mets had a closed door team meeting and everything. So frustration started to mount over there, I think, as well.
Yeah, listen, I think all right. So in terms of what Joe is, makes the suggestion that the teams pitch around the big bats, which you've seen a little bit, right? You've seen that with, especially in this Braves series. Are there guys in mind that you have in mind that could change the dynamic of the lineup? Getting Harper back is going to be a huge ask to kind of ask him to kind of slot right back into and produce the way he was. But just his presence in the lineup changes the whole dynamic of how people are pitched in the lineup. Are there guys around the league? Because the names to bring in really aren't, they're not like superstar, change the whole dynamic of your team kind of guys.
No, but and the thing to me is though, like we have too many superstars as it is, at least in terms of like when you're looking at a contract. So we that shouldn't be what the need is here, right? You need those guys to perform. You need, well, Harper coming back again, I think is already a huge addition. He might be a little rusty when he first comes back, but that's already a huge addition right there. Trey Turner's been playing pretty well right now. But Schwarber's been a little bit cold. I'm not worried about Kyle Schwarber. He kind of does this, but he'll be fine. But you need guys like you need Castellanos, and I know his slash line actually looks decent, and he hasn't been horrible this season. But what Joe just said there in the comment, approach wise, like his approach might be the most maddening thing I have ever seen in my entire life. I saw something the other day. After his benching, I think he swung at like 9 out of like 12 his 12. I might be getting the numbers a little bit skewed here, but it was like 9 out of his first 12 at bats back. He swung at the first pitch. It's like, dude, and it's always the same thing. It's always that slider outside, and he was getting better at that. Like, is he just pissed right now because he got benched? Like, and then last night with the blunders in the outfield, like 2 bad reads in the outfield. It's like, are you just trying to get back at Thompson right now? Like, what are you doing? He's frustrating. Bohm is like one of those players where, like he's been pretty good since May.
Yeah.
But again, the first pitch swinging and grounding out.
It's so
stop doing that. I know it's easier said than done. Like you put me. I'm acting like I could do better in the box here, but I can't. But it's just like, dude, you're on a major league field. It's the same thing every time. Like, stop swinging first pitch when all you can do is ground to second or short. Like, the approach is what's really frustrating to me. And I've said it before on the show. It's like, these guys are, veterans of, multiple years playing. Like, they have their set approaches. But the problem is, like, how is the way the line was built just have every guy who like doesn't have an approach when they get up to the bat, or to the plate? It's just like, I don't know. But that's the frustrating part for me is just the approach to this.
And listen, when you think about the guys that are out there, right? The guys that are out there are like, like I know they're like Josh Naylor is a guy, right? But he plays first base, and like, like if you plan on moving Harper back to the outfield, then what? Like, there's a lot of moving parts, right? I know that a team that they're playing right now, like Ozuna is a guy, because of where the Braves are, is a guy that gets talked about. But he's going to come in and be your DH. And,
we already have that.
You already have that, right? So, like, Luis Robert and his inconsistency, he's been really bad the last couple of years. Like Jesus Sanchez from the Marlins, like, you're not talking about.
No. So, Taylor Ward has been an interesting name who has been thrown around every now and then with the Angels. He's another guy, though, low average, high strikeout rate. So it's like, I mean, maybe you're adding power there, no doubt. But like, and now the Angels are like, I think they're only maybe a game or 2 out of first place, or out of below 500. So like, they might still be making a run at the wild card, and the West isn't that strong out there. So like, I don't know
they're
even how available
7.5 back.
But another one name I've seen, which I think is a pipe dream, is Jarren Duran from Boston. If Boston decides to be solid. Because
you're talking about giving up a lot, though, right?
A lot, yeah. And so and the thing is like, we have a lot of aging guys there. Now, Duran does have team control. He's a younger guy. He's only in his late 20s right now. He's having a bit of a down year, but we've seen what he can do. So, but again, what Boston's going to, especially team control, previous track record, like, he's going to cost you a pretty penny. So I don't think that's actually a realistic possibility, but I do really like Jarren Duran. So yeah, I've also seen like Adolis Garcia from Texas as a name out there potentially being thrown around, who, like, okay, again, track record. But if you look at his trending numbers, every year since they won the World Series, he's been getting like worse and worse and worse. And again, the common theme we're seeing with most of the guys we just talked about: low batting average, power potential, ton of strikeouts. Like, so I just think, like, are we making a change just for the sake of making a change, or just shake things up? There could be some value in that, like if that's what's needed. But that's a pulse I think the front office needs to have on this roster. But like at the same time, how much are they really going to change what we already have, right? Like, are we giving up prospect pieces to just get like the Luis Robert thing? There is not a rumor that I want to go away faster than that one, because I don't think, like, he has flashes, like he's super athletic, has flashes of greatness every now and then, but he has been bad for like 3 years straight now. The dude gets below 200 and he strikes out at a rate that like makes Castellanos like look like Tony Gwynn. Like, I mean, it's
very much so. Yeah.
So I don't want Luis Robert.
I'm kind of with you on it. Like you're getting a worse version of a guy that you already have.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these guys are kind of in that same boat. I mean, the problem is like right now Marsh is hot. Right now he's a left-handed bat, but still Marsh is hot. Does he stay hot? We've seen with him really drastic peaks and valleys with him. So Kepler has not done anything. So like, a Taylor Ward type situation out in left field, and doing something with Kepler, that I think does improve the lineup a little bit. Just because you're not really getting much out of him at all. So it's, it's a really tough spot to gauge, I think. First of all, still, because I think it's kind of early to see who's actually going to be available. And I also want to see, like, okay, what do we actually have? Like, is Marsh going to continue hitting? Can Kepler figure it out? Who knows? But I think they do still need to add a bat. It's just what they're going to go for, I think, is going to depend on a couple things.
Yeah. And then in terms of like back end guys, like Kyle Finnegan is a guy that I know a lot of people have talked about. Aroldis Chapman is a guy who's definitely has the postseason experience, definitely still has a lot of power left in his arm. But I'm cautiously worried about what the cost is to get those guys. Where are you kind of landing with it, with a late inning arm? I know Felix Bautista is a guy that I know we've talked about too in Baltimore.
Yeah, I like him probably the most out of all the ones we just said, but Chapman seems like a Dombrowski type move. And I also think just because of age and contract situation, he probably wouldn't be super, super expensive to get. So he might be like probably one of the more realistic possibilities. Finnegan's a weird situation because he re-signed with the Nationals this year. I'm surprised more teams didn't really, because he signed really late, if you remember. So I'm like, is there something there that teams just don't like about him? I liked him going into last year because he was a potential deadline piece. I know that they talked about last year, and I like him. There's Ryan Helsley from St. Louis, who is he's an impending free agent though, and he's actually been struggling a little bit more this year than he had in the past. But because of that, his trade value might go down a little bit. He's got an electric arm, so there could be something there. But I think out of all the ones we talked about, Felix Bautista is probably my favorite of those guys. I'm trying to think if there was any other names being tossed around that I'm not remembering.
Like I'm going through an article right now, right? And there's not like there's a handful of starting pitchers. There's there's not a ton of options.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not gonna take a guy who's in a starting role in another team and ask him to come and be your back end closer. Like, you're gonna want a guy who's got experience in those moments. So it's like it's just hard. It's hard to look at the options that are there and go like, is it worth selling what you have to be able to get a guy that is kind of close to what you already have?
Right. And so again, it's like, I think with the bullpen, it's easier to say, okay, they definitely need someone to fill in that back end role, right? I mean, Kerkering has been decent. He gave up that run the other night in Houston. Romano has been like, I want that guy to be good so bad, but
Right.
that slider he hung last night to Sean Murphy, whew,
Oh God,
that was a bad one. And I'm just like, I don't think he's the guy. Alvarado, we said will be back in August, but he's unavailable. So like, I think they have to get someone just to get them through just to get them even through the regular season. Like, disregarding what Dombrowski said about, postseason bullpen situation, like there's got to be someone else. I mean, right now they're basically doing this like taxi squad situation with the long men between Alan Rangel and what was his name? Daniel Robertson or Roberts or whatever it was, the guy who came in last night.
Mm-hmm.
But like, and they both pitched well, but heading down the stretch, we don't what you don't want is having an inconsistent bullpen, because that's been a strength for this team for the last couple of years. Their bullpen was really good, which was something that they weren't really used to seeing or having. But this year, it's really taken a step down. Losing Alvarado obviously hurts that. So I think that is the move that I want to see them make the most. Get a solidified back end guy.
Yeah. I know Harper's kind of offered the opportunity to go back out to the outfield. To me, that's like a last case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I think that but the options at center field also aren't. There's not a ton there. I'm just everything kind of just for me kind of circles back to like the guys that are here have to produce. If you want to go anywhere, the guys that are already here have to be able to get done what they got to get done.
Right. We have one of the highest payrolls in baseball. It has to, like, again, I'm always for improving the club. Don't get me wrong. And there's holes. Mm-hmm. There's definitely holes that need to be addressed. But I think the first hole that needs to be addressed is your offensive approach has to be better. And that's something that I know it's easier said than done, but that's something that's fixable. Like, you can sit there and say, okay, maybe I'm not going to swing at the first pitch after this guy just threw 6 straight balls and walk the 2 guys before me. Like, or okay, I have guys on first and second, 1 out. Let me make sure I don't swing at the first pitch and roll the ball over to second base. Like, there's just the offensive approach and mindset, I think, is the thing that needs to change first and foremost, because we had this club is built to have one of the better lineups in baseball. And we've seen flashes where they look like that, and we've seen flashes where they look like they have no business being on the same field as some of these pitchers.
Yeah. So before we jump out of here, give me just what are you looking for out of today?
I think we're going to see another pitcher's duel. Strider over his career has handled the Phillies really well in the regular season. Postseason, different story. But regular season wise, he's handled the Phillies lineup really well. He's coming off that injury, so he hasn't been going, and he's never really been a guy who goes real deep into games. So now, will the Phillies lineup actually get him out in like the 5th inning? Because that's about how far he's been going in most of his starts. He's not really going 6 or 7 innings because he gets a ton of strikeouts. But he's also been walking a lot of guys too. So his pitch count has been high. And plus, I don't think they're pushing him as hard coming off the surgery. So I would love to see them get Strider out of the game in the 5th inning. I would love to see Ranger go for, I think, what does he have? 9? You sent it to me earlier this week. Is it 9 straight quality starts or something like that? So I think, Ranger right now is on a roll.
About as well as anyone
in baseball. Yeah. So I think we could easily get another 6-7 inning start from Ranger. So I think we're looking at low scoring through the first few innings here. And then really it's going to be up to the offense to work Strider and try to get into their bullpen as quickly as possible. But I trust Ranger, but it's what's this offense going to look like today? Now they didn't score a lot yesterday, so maybe they have some runs banked up.
I'm curious when the lineup comes out. I'm curious to see the lineup that gets put together to go up against Strider today. But I think you got to get Rangers some run support, and you got to be able to get him, get him the run support early. Let him get comfortable, and then just let him get into a groove. And if you can let him get into a groove, then he's going to be lights out, which I can only anticipate that he's going to be able to, find his way and really begin to navigate the back end of this season, kind of going into the All-Star break and really start to hit his stride.
Yeah. I mean, when he's on, and we saw at the beginning of last year, like when he's on, and he is just like one of the most fun pitchers to watch because of his demeanor out there. I love watching Ranger. So
anything leading into the All-Star break? I know that there's the where the Phillies are kind of falling and voting is really not putting them in position to kind of put anybody that their most likely candidates are going to be the guys that are coming out of the rotation. I'm just looking for this second half of this team, the second half of the season, to really kind of start to hit their stride.
Yeah, you're right. From an All-Star perspective, it's like, well, does anyone really deserve it? I mean, you can maybe argue Trey Turner just because he's got like the most hits in baseball. He's actually been hitting pretty consistently. Maybe you can argue that he should have a shot at getting in there, maybe even as a reserve. Other than that, though, I mean, I think we're looking at Wheeler. I think it would be interesting to see Luzardo because he had those two horrible starts.
Yeah.
Other than that, he's been really good.
It is wild.
Christopher Sanchez has been very underrated, I think. He maybe has a shot. And the thing is with Ranger, just because he missed some time, I don't know if he has enough innings to that they'll want to put him in. But I mean, he's been good enough to. I mean, especially if he pitches well, today and I feel like if he gets 10 straight quality starts, it's hard to not add him to that.
He's making a really good case for it.
He is.
Listen, we'll check back in with the people in a couple weeks, but on the way out, go Phils.
Go Phils.
Hey, listen to this guy. Tell me how you're feeling here. You're screaming.
I am stoked, baby.
You're screaming like it's still the game going on.
We're talking about the fightings here. The fightings.
Said, Mike.
Yeah, Stokes.